Hello, Kane. Hello, G. Pleasure to be here.
Oh,
3 to go.
You had a big
Yes.
weekend. You had the magical number of 50, and the Bulldogs tripped over it at about 38, which was prophetic. Not pathetic, prophetic.
Yeah.
And, of course, you dissected the Geelong game to within an inch of its life. In fact, I reckon Chris Scott was listening.
He must have been, Hoyne.
The only thing I didn't do was actually tip him.
That's right.
Did all the work. Did all the work and didn't tip. I don't know why, but yeah.
Hoyne, how has your mind been reframed in terms of who is capable of winning this premiership with the teams left in it and the way that they are playing? And I'm not sure any of us have given Geelong much of a hope now, but are we starting to think that they could do it again or not?
Yeah, I think as we get towards this time of year, and in particular in finals, but even ourselves, you sit back and then review the year, and what can we learn from the data that we've got and how we're analysing the game. And we touched on it last week that there is a clear difference between what happens in finals footy and what happens in home and away footy. And I think when probably assessing profiles moving forward, I think we've got to take into account more of what we know and are willing to expect come finals, and whether or not you're playing that way. So, from a Geelong perspective, as we touched on last week, no one wants to embrace and have a chaotic game more than what the Cats do, and 80% of finals are chaos. So then you look at what they do from a ground ball perspective, and it's top 2 in the comp along with Hawthorn. You sit there and you go, okay, well they have other deficiencies in their game. But this is what finals footy is going to be, and this has them top 2 in the comp. So this alone should make them a threat come September, despite myself and a lot of us probably not really giving them the credit or the chances heading into a September campaign. You look at GWS, and I'll talk about them a little bit later on, and where their profile sits at the moment, it's nowhere near as good as what it was this time last year heading into finals. But they have a couple of aspects in their game that are ticked off,
Like pressure?
that correlate to what happens in finals, that then gives them the chance heading into finals. So I think when you look at it, and we'll dissect the 6 remaining teams in a little bit of time shortly. But I think everyone else, the 5. Probably, Hawthorn, you're looking at, there's no team at the moment that has everything ticked off more than the Hawks. What the Cats did on the weekend, I don't think they're as good as what they did against Port Adelaide. Clearly, if they do that for the next 2 games, they're going to win the flag. I don't think they're at that level, but what they did and how they played makes them a serious threat. The Giants the same. Brisbane's profile is rock solid. The Swans, we'll get into them shortly, do it differently. Is that concerning or not? I'm not sure. And then, where Port Adelaide sit, is probably a different story.
When you say, is that concerning, I'm not sure, I'm interpreting that as that's concerning.
Yeah, they're on the agenda as we go.
all right.
As we go
Well,
on.
let's kick it off with your overall obs.
Yeah, so the overall observation. So again, sticking to the theme that we brought to the table last week, the chaos and control, and all 4 teams that won on the weekend won the ground ball battle.
Yep.
Right. So over, and we
It's
spoke,
a big tick for the chaos.
Yeah, and we spoke about this a little while ago in terms of the impacts that key forwards have on the competition. Have on a finals campaign, and it is a ground level game. It's a small ball game, and if you don't have that personnel in there, you're potentially in a bit of strife. So we're now getting into the list management decision period for the next, next 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Draft, trade, delistings, all that sort of stuff. And there's just a few clubs I just wanted to speak about, that actually aren't playing finals at the moment. And the Collingwood discussion for me is interesting. I've heard a few conversations come out of Collingwood that we need a key forward.
Yep.
And that is the number 1 priority for us in this off season, is that we need a key forward. I'm looking at going, well, next year you'll have Myercheck and McStay playing together for the first time in 12 months.
And Cox.
And a combination that got you to a top of the ladder position, a combination that got you to a grand final spot, and then McStay obviously wasn't their grand final day. To me, I'm looking at it going, is that what you need? Do you need that? Do you need someone behind the footy, more importantly, to actually come in and replace a Nathan Murphy, or because you do have the smalls around you in the forward half of the ground to complement McStay and to complement Myercheck. I look at Fremantle and I go, okay, Fremantle played in the second fewest chaotic matches of any team this year. Only St Kilda played in less. So by all reports, they're every chance to get Shai Bolton this year. You get him in the forward half of the ground. Does that then release the shackles to embrace a more ground ball chaotic game off the back of getting this particular player into your into your program to actually change your method, change your style that suits and is there for finals footy? I look at Port Adelaide at the moment, Kane, and they have the numbers there in terms of the smalls, but in all honesty, are they at that level of a Geelong and Hawthorn? They're probably not. Evans and McEntee and these guys.
Brutally honest,
they're not
sure they'd be getting a game in 14 of the 18 teams, let alone a top 2 side. And look, that was evident. I think when you give someone like a McEntee a role and he can go to Stewart and he can set his mind to that and he doesn't really have to touch the football to be an effective player on the night, different story, and he gets away with it. But when he actually has to play as a genuine small forward, then you get found out. Now, Willie Rioli's got to be fitter, I think, has the attributes to be an elite small forward, and you mentioned his finals record, didn't get the opportunities on Thursday night, but their bottom 10 players, Hoyne, are just not up to it. That's the brutal reality of it.
And I don't like doing this, but I just wonder, if you're a North Melbourne supporter, are you going to be cringing watching Nick Watson play for the next 10, 15 years? When you pick Zane Duursma ahead of him, who's that, is 188, 190 centimetres, looks good, moves good, all that sort of stuff. I hear that, understand that. This guy, from an evidence perspective, there was no one who's done and had as much impact as a small at junior level for years than what this guy has done, and he's 177, and then he comes into a Hawthorn system under Sam Mitchell, first final, see what he does. Geez, that's going to be... That could be a hard watch. For years, Richmond supporters copped it for watching Buddy Franklin when they could have had him, and you could have had him for 15 years. Just wonder about this. Melbourne. So I hear a lot about Melbourne and the key forwards. Key forward. Van Rooyen's 21, 22, and he competes. He's a competitor. That's all you need. Yep. That's all you need.
Even Disco Turner, why can't he be Cowshadir?
That's all you need. Just give me someone that competes. But work out around it, other than Pickett, who else have you got around it from a ground ball perspective that can come to the party and play this way? And then the Swans, I heard you mention earlier on, G, they're the outlier with this, with what they've got with their 3 key forwards. Haywood's not a ground ball player. He's that sort of, that mid-size sort of player. So they've got
good
Papley.
Player, Hoyne, Haywood.
He's been on Haywood for 18 months. Just have a bit of fun with that, don't we, sometimes? But
he'd be a better player if he got more touches, Kane.
Yeah, it's hard. You're not going to get many touches playing that role, though.
Yeah,
you've got to watch what he does off the ball as well.
Yeah,
No, I do watch what he would do, but even still, he'd be a better player if he does what he does off the ball, plus get more touches. And that
How
may
many
mean
goals does he kick though?
But that may mean roll him through
goals.
through the middle a little bit, just to release a little bit.
I know that you dubbed this guy a genius, Kane, in Sam Mitchell, and I think we're all sort of really taken by what he's been able to do over a 2.5 year period, but. I heard him, it would have been 3 months ago, and he's speaking about deer, and he put his hand up, and he said, we didn't expect this. No. But it's a learning for him that he said that, we now look at it from a recruiting and a trade perspective with key forwards. If you can compete ahead of the footy, you are going to be a chance to make it in this game. And
there's a good article about him somewhere today. I was reading about the Sandy Dragons guy. Said to the Hawks, if you don't pick him, someone else will.
So I just think if it's your own team, just sit back and just have a think about it over the next couple, of weeks before trade period, sort of gets into action. Have we got these ground ball players ahead of the ball? And if we haven't, like an Essendon, I don't think you have that at the moment. I know that you're potentially going to get this kid in the draft that's going to be able to help that. But what else can you
player?
Yeah. So what else? But what else can you do?
Who's the Bobby Hill? Who's the Bobby Hill that can win you a premiership with one shrewd trade?
Well, the kid with the lid was a great pickup, and they haven't actually played their number 1 pick from last year or the year before. Who is another small forward? They've been ahead of the game on grabbing all these small forwards.
Rogers is the other one at Gold Coast who's going to be a player as well. All right, let's get stuck into your talking points. Just before we do that, I got a question for you, Hoyne, because people accuse us of not reading them out. Can someone replay what Hoyne said last week about the Cats? Just in 30 seconds, sum up why you gave Geelong a chance to beat Port Adelaide on Thursday night.
So 80% of finals over the last 5 years are a ground ball game. There's more ground balls than marks. Heading into that game for the whole season, Geelong number 2 in ground balls in general play. Port Adelaide 18.
And what happened on the night?
And Geelong belted them in that area.
Absolutely smashed them in that area. All right, you're going to start with Hawthorn tonight, and clearly you're pretty impressed with the way that their game is in order.
Oh, it's ridiculous at the moment.
In rude health.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what they're doing at the moment, and they deserve full credit. And sort of, how they played that game on the weekend, to take 117 marks, I think that was a bit unexpected.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you two thought watching it. I can't remember a team that makes the ground as big as quickly as what they do on offence to actually spread the ground. And then it makes it hard as the opposition to be able to move it. So you head into this game by taking 117 marks and you force the Dogs to go and cover so much ground on the night. When they are actually able to win the ball back, they don't have the usual method with ball in hand. So the Dogs, second best ball movement team for the whole season in terms of going from one end of the ground to the other. They had 49 opportunities on the weekend against Hawthorn to do that. They did it 4 times. It was clearly their worst ball movement game on the across the season.
So all the personnel is moved to various parts of the earth.
Yeah, so I think if you're Port Adelaide this week and you're watching Friday night against, if you see Hawthorn get into this and they spread the ground and they get so quick on offense, Port are going to be in trouble. They're going to struggle to be able to keep up with that. Then you look at what they do on offense, Hawthorn, and we've spoken about it at length on this show all year. The ability to win the ball back across that half-back area and then explode and score off that. 4 of the last 5 premiers have been number 1 in the competition at scoring off that particular area of the ground. AFL average is about 3 goals a game you get from that. Hawthorn scored 39 points on the weekend against Hawthorn. So think of what Sicily and the impact Sicily can do in that area, the impact Weddle has, Scrimshaw, D'Ambrosio with his ball use. Now Hawthorn, where do Hawthorn sit across the whole season? They're now the number 1 team in the comp at scoring from there. Keep in mind, 4 of the last 5 premiers being number 1. Hawks are now number 1 in the competition. If you're a Hawthorn supporter and now you're sitting back going, gee, Sam Frost was a big loss. Clearly, he is a big loss, right? Yeah. Absolutely, you can't deny that. He's been fantastic for what Hawthorn have done. You mentioned it off the top of the show. We talked on it last week. This is going to be another team defence aspect for Hawthorn that will be able, and hopefully will be able to cover this. Only once in best part of 4 months now has Hawthorn conceded 50-plus entries to their opposition. So it's not as if they're putting this back group under immense pressure.
Right.
So their ability to be able to protect this person coming in, whoever it might be, Sarong or Phillips, whoever it might be, that is, clearly their strength at the moment.
50 is the one number.
From a team perspective. Can Port generate the 50-plus that Hawthorn simply just don't concede?
You said that about the Bulldogs last week. They weren't able to do it, and they're licking
and that's
their
Port's
wounds.
biggest challenge. It's Port's biggest challenge on Friday night. Can they move it, and can they challenge this, this back 6, back 7 of Hawthorn?
Are Hawthorn in the premiership window?
Yep. No, they're in there.
Okay.
They were there last week, weren't they?
They were. They just squeezed their way in. So they do. Clear right now. They are clearly the best team in the competition.
Okay, there it is.
So
All right. Just before we move on to Geelong, were you let down by the Bulldogs and their performance?
Yeah, I was.
Surprised?
Really surprised. Absolutely, really surprised. I spoke about them last week, been speaking about them for a while in terms of a profile point of view. They didn't have anything wrong in their game. And then to rock up and see what they did Friday night and see, their stars really just not fire a shot. I mean, if I had said to you, Kane, that at halftime, that would be Bontempelli's lowest rated half of football since his 6th game of football in his career, you would have just write your own ticket.
You would have said like we said, he's injured.
Yeah, it was just like watching it. It was just like, mate, they didn't even fire a shot. So that was the most surprising part of the night. But as I just said, you've just got to give Hawthorn full credit for what they're doing at the moment, and that's a learning moving forward for everyone.
Anything more on the Dogs? Because we were going to talk about them after 6:30, but
I'll just finish it off with the Dogs. So I think we review the year, the Dogs will review the year. They did a lot right. Clearly, they did a lot right, but Then you sit back and you see what Sam Mitchell did against this team twice and exposed them on the outside. So for the Dogs to have their two worst contested possession differentials in general play happen against Hawthorn twice and to be absolutely pantsed twice against Hawthorn. And then I touched on Hawthorn taking 117 marks, which was a surprise to me. I wasn't too sure that you were going to see that in a final first week of finals. And then you do a little bit of digging. This is why you dub him a genius, Kane, and fair enough too. When the Dogs conceded over 100 marks this year, it only happened 8 times. That was 0 and 8. Did not win one game when they conceded over 100 marks. So their inability to be able to spread and then cover so much of the ground, and then when the opposition actually forced them to defend all aspects of the ground, that's when they actually struggled most. So for Sam Power and Beveridge and the whole footy club to unpack this and unpack how do we minimise us getting into trouble in that aspect of the games against certain clubs is going to be the challenge for them this off season. So
what about their personnel with the 3 tools that we spoke so much about? Is that a profile and a personnel that's going to work for them?
I've got doubts. And I've got doubts purely off the back of what we've spoken about for the last 8 days. Is that you look at someone like a Cody Waitman, right? So Cody Waitman's
he's more tall than a small,
but his highest rated games this year have happened when there's only been 1 key forward or 2 key forwards. When the 3 of them have all played, he's had hardly any impact in those matches. So I feel like that he gets lost in that, and then I feel like as I said, I'd be addressing this general play aspect of the game. Clearly, your clearance work in at stoppage is a strength. That's where your stars lie. What can you do around around the flanks to be able to sort of enhance your list profile to actually take you to the next step?
All right, Dogs fans, 0433 98 11 16. Do you agree with that as we move on to the rampaging Geelong Football Club through to another prelim final? Hoyne, how'd they do it?
So Kane and Gerard, I just want to throw this out. They're not playing this week, so they're not going to get... Next week, if I hear anyone talk about that Geelong's midfield is their weakness, I will vomit.
Right. No, it's throw up.
Okay.
No, okay. Well, I will throw up. I was trying to be a little bit more sort of like, I will put it to bed, right?
Yeah.
Since Dangerfield has come back in, so forget the Carlton game, and that was his first game back. Since he's come back, so his second game back, right? Since round 16, they are clearly the number 1 team for points differential at clearance. Their ability to put it on the scoreboard is number 3.
Yep.
And their ability to defend it, no one is harder to score against at clearance than Geelong. And their raw clearance differential in terms of how many that you win and you lose is top 4 in the comp. Right? So do not get sucked in. And I do not want to hear anything prelim final. Oh, no, the Giants or Brisbane, no, they can get Geelong at clearance because that's their so that's their weakness. Throw it in the bin.
Yep.
It's just not. And it is... And I get that Dangerfield. Dangerfield is the one. We all know that, right? But what Holmes did on the weekend was unbelievable. Even what Bose did, Kane, on the weekend, like it's enough. It's enough.
8 clearances, didn't he?
Correct. What Broome did on the weekend, it's enough. What Atkins did on the weekend, it's enough. Like, Manor then rolls up to stoppage. It's enough to have impact. This midfield is not a weakness. It is actually turned in to a strength over the last 2 months of the season. So, and then you watch what they did on, to start the game. And I know this might sound simplistic and you guys might disagree or not. You go back and watch that first 10 minutes. I said this to someone yesterday. It reminded me of Brisbane 20 years ago under Lee Matthews. Get the footy and get it forward. And belt it forward and punch it forward and handball it forward and kick it forward. This is a learning.
Who was the ruckman that came out of the Glasshouse Mountains? It was Clark Keating with one roll.
Sometimes.
Hit it forward.
And Duncan, there was a ball up for grabs. Didn't take possession. Belt it forward 30 metres.
Yep.
Tanner Bruin gets a handball. Belt it forward 20 metres. So this is a learning for us. Their ground ball game stacks up. They kick it forward, the second most of any team in the comp. They generate the fourth most metres by hand of any team in the comp. And their distance throughout their kicking, they gain the 3rd most metres by foot of any team in the comp. Forward footy, ground ball footy, chaotic footy, finals footy.
Crispy Chris Lucas has been up and about. He's going to throw the doors of Chin Chin open if the Cats get up. So There's something in it for everybody here, Kane.
So how surprised were you by that, Kane? I think everyone was shocked.
Yeah, I was just shocked, but you could tell, as you said, in the first 10 minutes. You could tell in the first 5 seconds when Willem Drew fumbles an easy handball from Zach Butters, and Zerk Thatcher ducks his head and drops an easy uncontested intercept mark. You go, hang on, something's off here, and the half forwards come up to stoppage like we all knew they were going to do, and then punch it forward, run onto it, and cause havoc. And it was just so evident. But I was surprised with how easily they moved the football. And how efficient they were when they got on the outside, and their running power as well stood out, led by Max Holmes, as you mentioned. All right, what's the clue for the finals edition of Guess Who, Hoyne?
Guess Who? So this is a generic Guess Who question, right? So the last 30 preliminary finals and grand finals, so the last 10 years, how many times has a team come from behind at three-quarter time to win?
All right,
30
finals,
prelims or grand finals.
13 prelim Hawks v Cats, says Daniel. The 09 grand final, says another text. Someone says once, Geelong 2009. It's got to be a low number, otherwise you wouldn't be asking the question. I'm going to go with 3. Hoyne?
Yeah, it is. I probably, you know what, Kane, I'm looking at the text machine. I probably actually should have worded it a little bit different. The last 10 years. So there's been 30 prelims and grand finals combined in that. Only once has a team come from behind at three-quarter time to win
Which disappointing
game of footy.
Side was in front and gave up the lead.
And that was the Dogs in the 16 prelim against GWS, and they were behind only by 1 point.
Right.
So
shop early.
So the story that I want to get across is around about the Swans. Okay.
Yep.
So 2 of their last 5 wins have come from 4 goals down at three-quarter time to win. And the Stars in those 2 games against GWS and against Collingwood were phenomenal, and they are phenomenal footballers. But do you want to get? Clearly, you don't want to get yourself into that position. So I'm looking at come a prelim final, whether that be against Hawthorn or against Port, and and with what Hawthorn are doing at the moment, let's say it is against Hawthorn. To give a team that sort of luxury in a prelim or grand final, as I said, history says, and I'll back history until history changes, it is so hard to overcome a three-quarter time deficit over the last 10 years in a prelim or grand final. So to put that into context, in all other matches, it happens close to 15% of the time you come from behind at three-quarter time to win. It happens, 1 in 30. As I said, over the last 10 years.
Pies nearly got there a couple of years ago against Sydney. They were 21 points down.
Yeah,
and lost
they did. They run them home. Now, there's been a few. So your team, Kane, 2014 prelim against Hawthorn, ran them close and probably deserved to get over the line.
3-9 in that first quarter.
First quarter. You're all over them too,
3-9.
aren't you? Yeah, I remember that one. That was a cracking final.
Bernie's just texted through and said, how did the Dogs beat the Cats at Geelong and twice beat the Giants?
So the game against Geelong.
How did the Dogs beat the Cats at Geelong?
Yeah, so the game against Geelong at Geelong was in a mud heap.
Right.
So that takes out your flankers, and that takes out your marking ability. The first game against the Giants at Spotless Stadium was in the wet. Takes out your flankers, takes out your marking ability. And the last game against the Giants at Ballarat was played in a gale, which takes out your flankers and takes out your marking ability. So that's a simple answer there. What I do, and again, there's learnings from every game on the weekend. I think what's happened with the Swans over the last couple of weeks, and what Heaney did and all these guys did was superb. To me, it's highlighted that Errol Goulden should be and has to be the number 1 target as an opposition team against the Swans for the next 2 matches. So what Sidebottom did against Goulden against Collingwood 4 or 5 weeks ago was phenomenal. And then largely what Peatling did against Goulden for the first 3 quarters, kept him to 12 disposals, 1 score involvement, and take out the subs. He was the second lowest rated player on the ground. Then Peatling really hardly goes anywhere near him in the last quarter, gets lost in a couple of changes of magnets. That tag gets moved. Goulden has 11 disposals in the last quarter, involved in 5 scores, and is the second highest rated player on the ground behind Warner. So I know we sit here and we talk about Warner and we talk about Heaney and what. To me, I'm looking at this if I'm Hawthorn or Port Adelaide next week, and this is the player that I'm putting my energy into, come a prelim final as opposed to Warner and Heaney.
It's not easy though, is it? Because
no, it's not.
Fife did a good job on Heaney, I reckon, earlier on in the year where he put a big body on him and really restricted him. And then Warner, you go, well, how the hell do you let Warner have 14 and 7 clearances in the last quarter? That's the beauty of Sydney, and that's their biggest weapon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what makes them hard is, you can't tag all three, can you? You're not going to tag all three. It's working out who you go to. And that's the discussion I'll be having. Kane, you might have a different opinion on it, absolutely.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
No, I don't think there is
what the
either.
Giants did to the two of them, Warner and Gordon, in the first 3 quarters, and it wasn't just Peatling. I thought Gordon was trying to get kicks from kickouts. I saw Darcy Jones just go straight to him. He wasn't allowing any room. They just shut him down like I hadn't seen from a team perspective. I thought it was so disciplined. But you're right. There are players from each club left in the finals, and if I'm Max Holmes and I'm playing against him, I'm going, no way are you going to do what you did on the outside to what you did to Port Adelaide. So I'm not sure he's ever been tagged before, Holmes, and when that happens, they don't know how to handle it when it happens the first time. We'll see if that happens in a final. So let's move on to Port Adelaide.
1 sec before you do, please, Kane. A quick text wanting clarification on the comebacks from behind. It says the three-quarter time comebacks historical numbers remain relevant pre-666 era. But to me, it's easier to come back from behind in the post-666 era because it's just easier to score.
Yeah, you look back over the last 10 years and it hasn't actually changed too much over time. And and you did something on this, Kane, during the year about
scoring
about the rule changes. Yeah, 100%. Like it's changed a little bit, but it hasn't. It's not as if the game's completely different.
Inconsequential that rule change, and it has taken out a lot of the coaching tactics that you can use at centre bounce. Port Adelaide is still alive somehow, Hoyne. What needs to change here?
So 2 things here. If I'm Port, looking, clearly their finals record over recent history, has been disastrous. And we spoke about the Geelong change in method, change in style post 2021, and they went to Adelaide Oval qualifying final 2021 with this control method in hand, and it can come undone very quickly. And when it comes undone, it looks horrendous. They've changed. Port Adelaide have only been involved in 8 chaos-based matches this year.
And lost,
and we spoke about that,
yeah,
and this ground ball stuff, and they've taken the 4th most uncontested marks in the comp. They only, I think they only allowed 70 or 75 uncontested marks on the weekend against Geelong. So I just wonder whether or not there needs to be a change in method and a change in philosophy, with this group at the end of this season. Clearly, you're probably not going to be able to change too much over the next, 4, 5, 6 days, whenever their final is. But just a change in method and a change in philosophy moving forward, similar to what Geelong had to do at the end of another failed campaign. Remember those years, Kane and G, where they were talked about, they can't get it done. Their record in week 1 of finals was horrendous. They just keep falling short with this method, this control game. They threw it in the bin and then everything's changed.
When Geelong changed, was that a philosophical change or was it we have now got the personnel to change?
I think it was. I think it was more an absolute mindset sort of shift. Yeah. If you're Geelong, because Jeremy Cameron was there in 2021.
Yeah, but the Myers and the ground ball.
No, they were there.
Close.
Close was there.
Okay.
Myers was there.
Yep.
Stengel was the only one that came in at the end of that campaign. And I know you probably don't agree with this, Kane, and I understand that as well. I spoke about Connor Rozee 3 or 4 months ago, and is he the player? Yeah, I know. Is he the player that we actually think he is? And Horn Francis, to me, on Thursday night was the only one that actually looked like a point of difference. Butters, I thought Butters was actually okay in
nice touches.
The first 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then obviously was quite sore, but. This guy has only been a top 90 player once in his career. He's currently 177. His record against top 8 teams compared to bottom 10 teams this year is significantly different. I'm straight away looking at this on Friday night to see whether or not he can get it done against the Hawks. Because I'm sitting here right now and I've got pretty strong confidence that Horn Francis is going to have an almighty crack and actually going to throw something at Hawthorn. Butters, a little bit, injured, whether or not he's going to be able to get it done. But this guy, to me, always gets thrown in the conversation. Horn Francis, Butters, Rozee. And we talk about a couple of his individual games this year, which are off the charts. But in terms of what we've seen across his career, what we've seen from a consistent basis, it hasn't been there. And I think he needs to have one of those games like he did against Essendon this year to get Port Adelaide over the line on Friday night. I
still think that they could do with him, as Coach Corns has said, across the half-back line.
Footy, yeah.
I just think it's perfect for him.
Yeah, no, it would be a big call, but
No, it's his biggest challenge. As I said to Gerard, I'm going to write about it in the Age this week. But certainly, as a young captain, you face some moments in your career where you've got to stare it down and produce an almighty performance, and that is what is the reality for Connor Rozee this Friday night. What about the Giants?
So the Giants really, at the moment, with where their profile's at, have two things going for them. That being the number one pressure team in the comp and being a top 3 contested footy team in general play. And we threw it on the agenda last week. How far can that alone take you? If you think back to Collingwood 2 years ago where they just fell 1 point short from a complete profile perspective, it wasn't a great profile, but they had a couple of things going for them. One being pressure and one being their defensive 50 stuff. Then you watch what GWS did on the weekend to Sydney, and their pressure from start to finish was immense, and that's what you're going to get. And then their contested footy work in general play stacked up again, and was the reason why they were able to shut the Swans down behind the footy so well with Taylor and Buckley in particular. I reckon if you're GWS, and I get the dilemma that you've got. At three-quarter time, when you're 21 points in front, do you change your own method or do you keep going with that method? And this new speed of ball movement stuff that we're working on and that we'll have ready to rock and roll for 2025 showed on the weekend that GWS in the last quarter, no one moved the ball slower than what GWS did in the last quarter on the weekend against the Swans, compared to what they did in the first 3 quarters where they moved it at speed. So that, and then having a
tsunami turned into a bay wave.
Yeah, and I just, you had Sydney on toast with what you were doing with your handball game, your meters gain game, and then your quick play game. And then I reckon this midfield group wouldn't have enjoyed the review of the last quarter, in particular with their work at stoppage. So forget GWS's pressure. GWS's pressure in the last quarter was unbelievable at close to 230 AFL, which is 180. But GWS were able to win the ball at stoppage more than the Swans. So they had their hands on the footy more than them, but they simply could not handle the Swans' pressure that they were throwing at them at stoppage. So to have your hands on the footy 2 more times than what the Swans did at first possession, but then to lose clearance by 8 is an absolute killer. And the Swans scoring 7 times as a result of that. So your inability to be able to cash in, and then more importantly, your inability to then cough it up to the Swans. So you're looking at what, Tom Green was unbelievable for 3 quarters, but then his inability to be able to be clean at stoppage and then get away. Peatling a little bit the same. Callahan a little bit the same.
Callahan had 2 in the last quarter.
So I reckon that would be a hard review. If you're the Giants, did so much right, but there's just a little bit there in that last quarter from a method perspective, and then from a real midfield perspective.
Hoyne, I know we've got a lot to get through, but you will be pleased that you've just bobbed up on the SEN available episodes on the podcast, and the headline is, Kane, I will vomit.
What'd you notice with the Lions, Hoyne?
Just want to give their defence a bit of recognition if we can. Everyone knows how potent they are offensively, but defensively I don't think they get the credit that they deserve. So far across the whole season, they have been the second hardest team in the competition to turn possession into a score against, and we saw that in the first 50 minutes against Carlton. Carlton had the footy 47 times for 0 scores. So defensively, this team is rock solid. It's going to be so interesting on Saturday night from an accuracy perspective. We talk about accuracy with Brisbane so often enough. Low number, 50% accuracy. They are 7-0. They get over 50% accuracy. They're 7-0. They have created the most shots at goal in the competition. 50% accuracy. If you're a Lions supporter, that is what you're striving for, because the rest of your game is so good. If you can get this game out of pressure from what the Giants are going to be able to sort of deliver, you're going to be in absolutely ripping shape to actually give this a real shake on Saturday night.
Sarah has just joined us, the number 1 pool inspector in the country. Mad Lion supporter. He wants you to put your computer on the line, and who's going to win that game?
I'm going to go GWS. I'm going to go GWS purely from the chaos v control perspective, but would not be surprised whatsoever if Brisbane get over the line.
All right, and what about the Blues and the fallout for them?
So then the Blues, a little bit of what you're looking for the rest of the season. So sort of during that trade period. So their ball movement game just didn't get going at all. Third worst ball movement team in the competition. In the last 2 or 3 months of the season, their work in general play was the 4th worst of any team,
which
in
is
the
why they're
competition.
after Houston.
So yeah, ball users and speed. I know it sounds really easy to go after, but it's a clear weakness. And then their smalls, a little bit like Port Adelaide, Kane. I reckon they had the smalls there, but have they got the quality? Like is Durden up to it? Is Motlop up to it? And Owies is actually out of contract, and Fantasia's sort of hit and miss with injury. So a couple of little areas there for the Blues to address over this off season.
All right, coaches' votes are back for the Gary Ayres medal, which brings us to who they missed.
Josh Ward thought he was fantastic. Attended the most centre bounces of his career, playing in that permanent centre bounce role. 5th highest rated player on the ground, didn't get a vote. Rory Lobb, I thought, was the only reason why the Dogs were actually anywhere near the Hawks at halftime with what he was able to do behind the footy. Tom Papley did get 2 votes from the coaches, but I thought he probably deserved to get more. I thought him and Heaney were the only reasons they were were within 4 goals at at 3/4 time. We had him as the 2nd best player on the ground.
Coaches were very big on Lloyd.
Yeah, Tom Green got votes in that game as well. I want to also give Sam Taylor a bit of recognition. 3rd highest rated player on the ground. Thought his last quarter was enormous to actually just even give GWS a chance to hold up. 6 intercepts alone in that last quarter. And then Will Ashcroft. So a real ratings impactful game. 20 disposals, 9 score involvements. He was the 3rd highest rated player on the ground. His ball use across the whole weekend was top 5 from the weekend. So
how many did the coach have? How many did Fakes
didn't get a vote.
Come
didn't
on,
get
Fakes.
a vote, Fakes. So
Yes,
no, he
really
was
good
Brisbane's number 1
player.
rated player on the ground.
He was value for touch. I thought he was excellent. You're right. All right, take us through your gem.
So my gem. So in finals, there's only been 2 players to do this in finals. 20 plus disposals, 500 plus metres, 12 plus score involvements, 3 goals, and 4 score assists. 2 players in 25 years in finals. Lance Franklin is one. The other, Sean Manor.
Wow, well played, Sean.
Well done, Sean.
Unbelievable.
Well done.
In your first final, you've joined the legend of Buddy.
That is amazing. Can you give us that again?
So unbelievable. 20 plus disposals, 500 metres, 12 score involvements, 3 goals and 4 score assists. Only 2 players.
He's arrived,
in
Sean
25 years have done it.
He's just pushed out Buddy Franklin.
What was that Buddy Franklin game?
I'll have to get that for you. I'll flick that through to you, can't I? But I don't have it.
Finish us off with a gem.
horror.
And the horror, unfortunately, for Carlton supporters. So 60-0. That's the longest streak a team has gone, being scoreless to their opposition, going to 60 points ever in a final. So it's
you saw a flat down at Tommy Ruff's.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Tommy Ruff's.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a good way to end. It wasn't a good way to end your season. So unfortunate there for the Blues.
Yeah, I'm not sure they would have scored if old Eric Hipwood didn't try and kick the ball.
Or Noah Ainsworth dropped that mark either.
Yeah, that was true. that chest mark. Hoyne, outstanding. We'll be monitoring your thoughts again this week with just the 2 games, but you'll be back to deliver the verdict ahead of prelim final next Tuesday. Look forward to it.
No, enjoy the 2 games. Can't wait for it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.